Alice Merton has a song titled I Have No Roots. Well, that's not the case with horror games because they have very strong roots, and more developers go back to those roots to make modern games heavily inspired by classic survival horror games. Like my next guest, Nathan, who is working right now on a game called Hollowbody. Hi Nathan, how are you?
Hey man, yeah, I'm great, thanks. Very good.
Personally, I'm a huge fan of good old survival horror games, so when I first saw Hollowbody, I was like, oh, it need to go to my wishlist. I'm curious about one thing. Today with tools like, let's say, Unreal Engine or whatever, you can do pretty much everything you want. You can do horror with first-person perspective, some jump scares, and still make a great game out of it. But you went in a different direction. You are making a game that sounds more challenging. And I'm curious, why did you decide to make a game inspired by classic survival horror games?
I guess so. When I decided to make Hollowbody, so when I describe Hollowbody as a survival horror game, I'm talking about sort of a very specific kind of horror game. Whilst there's lots of games available now that sort of involve both survival mechanics and horror themes, they're not technically survival horror, or at least not in the old sense of the word. So Hollowbody is closely following the footsteps of games such as Silent Hill, Kuon, Rule of Rose, Haunting Ground, Fatal Frame, to name a few of my personal favourites. But those games had a very specific makeup to their design that wasn't all about scares. It relied much more heavily on narrative and character motivations, cinematography. But they were very light on jump scares and instead worked on building dread through careful scene direction with fixed and dynamic camera angles and world building through player exploration. Yeah, this is the main reason I decided to go third person with Hollowbody. Obviously it is quite a bit more challenging than first person. There's a lot more animation work for a start. But I wanted to sort of recapture that feel of playing an old PS2 horror game for the first time. And a big part of that was being able to see the character you're playing as. Yeah, I mean, I previously worked on a first-person horror game called Chasing Static, and from a design point of view, the approach is very different, despite them both being horror games. Yeah, there's a lot you have to think about in a separate way when it's third-person. And yeah, of course, there are some fantastic first-person horror games out there, but I feel there's a bit of a lack of proper fixed camera games, and I'd like to be one of the guys who helps remedy that. Just to give a quick pitch about Hollowbody, it is, in my mind, Blade Runner meets Silent Hill. That is the easiest way of putting it. So it's set in the not-so-distant future, and you play as Mika, who is a shipper. She is a delivery driver, essentially, for black market goods. She crashes across an exclusion zone. It's an old, abandoned British city from hundreds of years ago. So the city itself feels very relatable to current British cities. There's a bit of more advanced tech there, but sort of the bricks and mortar are very typical. But yeah, Mika has some sci-fi gadgets at her disposal. She has to find her way out of the city while surviving, managing resources, and uncovering the dark secrets within the city, which I'm keeping my lips sealed about at the moment. But yeah, if anyone wants to wishlist it on Steam, that'd be amazing. It really helped me out.